back with my man Stuckey, who we were just talking, went 2-2 last week. Well, he had the Chargers, and the one franchise in American sports, college or pro, that you definitely cannot turn the TV off when they're up 27-0. It would be the Brandon Staley. Honestly, it could be any coach of the last decade led Chargers. But we are to the divisional round now, which in theory should be a bunch of just 3-point lines, haymaker games. We don't have one field goal line, and we have several that are very, very close to 10 points. So unique weekend, a lot of star power though. Stuckey, we are coming down the home stretch, right? We got 4 games this week. We got 2 games next week. Then we don't have many games left. We do not have many games left, man.
Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet. I think this because it is winding down, right? We have 4, then we have 7 games left. But this is, for my money, usually the best weekend on paper of the NFL season. And yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? It was a tough weekend for me because my Ravens, the way that they lost with the 99-yard fumble return.
What did you do when the ball flew in the air and landed right in his breadbasket?
I dropped. I mean, I was at my wife's bar and there was surrounded by Bengals fans, and I'm chirping. It's at night. I've been drinking all day, and that happens. Then everyone is like, then in my face, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! The way that this just happened. But the Chargers, yeah, I was like, I'm brilliant. I bet money line because I don't trust this team even lay 2.5, and then the Jags cut it to 2, and I'm like, hey, I got money line. Even though deep down inside, I know that they're going 3 and out. Jags are going to get the ball back.
That number when he got that 2-point and it went to from 3 to 2, that is a kick in the you know what.
Yep, I was like, oh, this game's going to end Chargers by 1. But yeah, 5 only 7 games left, so let's enjoy them and try to find a couple more winners this year.
Okay, let's go Saturday day. I think it's fair to say the Jags Super Bowl was last week. Incredible moment. I mean, it's got to be one of the greatest moments in the history of the franchise. They haven't had many, but that was cool. I mean, if you're a Jags fan, you're a Trevor Lawrence fan. I do think, I don't want to say out of gas, but 9 points is a lot. I think the Chiefs, and sometimes the bye week can be a little weird. Remember, was it years ago? It was weird for them. Remember, they had that stretch where they got like down in this round and down in the second round and came storming back. I think the way last year ended, the way they kind of retooled their team, of all the teams in the NFL this year that could handle a bye and would just come out laser focused, I mean, I expect the Chiefs to, in a weird way, not be looking ahead because the Bills or the Bengals would be, it's what the whole season was about, playing one of those two teams, right? And obviously the Bengals ruined their season last year. Both teams beat them this year. The Bills had that historic game against them last year, even though the Chiefs won. But I think they are going to come out swinging, come out for blood. And I like the Chiefs big in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting. They were -10 at home. They won by 10 at home. I don't know, maybe 2 months ago against the Jags.
Was it 27-17? I think.
Yeah, and in that game, the Jags recovered an onside kick to start. The Jags were 3-0 in turnovers, +3 turnover margin. By the way, the first game since 2018 and only the 4th since 2010 where a team was 3-0 or better in turnover margin and lost by double digits. So, they still lost by 10 despite recovering an onside kick and getting 3 turnovers. So, yeah, it's just a tough matchup because their secondary is so bad that Mahomes at any time could go up and down the field. You mentioned this, though, this has been a tough round for favorites. And you would think maybe, it's the opposite with the bye week. But historically, since, past 20 years, underdogs 45-30 against the spread in this round. And if you look at home favorites coming off of a bye, they're just 40% against the spread. And the number 1 seed is just 13-26 against the spread over the past 20 years, 8-23 against the spread. That's 25.8% when favored by less than 10 points. Again, these are just trends to throw out there. They don't mean that every game's going to go that way. But I would tend to agree with you. I would love, and look, you got to respect this Chiefs staff off of a bye. Reed's been great off of a bye. They're going to have a great, their scripted portion of this game will probably be elite. They're going to have a really good game plan for Lawrence, who struggles with disguise and certain coverages. You saw the Chargers have them confused early in that game. I would assume something similar for two coaches who are really familiar with each other. I didn't bet a side in this game. I would lean the under, but I'm just hoping that the Chiefs somehow get down early, and then I'm firing the Chiefs live because Mahomes and this offense should be able to move up and down the field at will. And this is a Jaguars defense that is dead last in the NFL in covering tight ends. Not great when you're going against Travis Kelce. So yeah, if I had to bet it, I would bet the Chiefs. But I do like a prop in this, a rare prop in this game. ETN over receiving yards at over 17.5. He had, I think, 3 for 30 when they first played. He got almost every snap last week. He was, ran, I think, 95% of routes on Lawrence dropbacks. They even put him in the slot. They put him out wide. Now, he only had 12 receiving yards, but this is a Chiefs team that's bottom 3 in the league in covering running backs. And they were able to generate a ton of interior pressure. And I feel like they're going to have some really exotic looks for Lawrence, which means checkdowns.
Yeah.
You might have some screens for him, and he might even get a look on the outside. So he's gone over that number 11 of 17 games this year when he wasn't hurt. If you exclude the Baltimore game. So I did play that. But I would agree with you. If the Chiefs come out here laser focused, then they could run away and hide in this game. I'm hoping that they don't, and Jags come out, jump on them, and then I can bet the Chiefs live.
I think ETN, big picture Jags, probably eventually going to be more of a, I don't want to call him a scat back, but more of a utility piece than a true back, starting running back. They get a bigger back in there. They're going to have some money. I'm sure a Josh Jacobs type guy, a power back to go with him. All of a sudden, to me, that offense, I'm just thinking next year could be a lot scarier, right? That's because you saw in that basically game-winning run that he had, like he does have elite speed, but he's just not a between the. And I think him and ironically Clyde as well on the Chiefs just shows you like. Unless he's just some all-time great talent like an Adrian Peterson, you just do not take running backs in the first round. It just doesn't. It's just way too risky. Even if they do have, elite pass catching skills or whatever. Probably too much Jags talk there, but I'm with you. The Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. Throw third down back, use him, in the slot and like some trick plays. That's where he could be elite if he has another great complementary back.
Yeah, so I'm with you there. And if I wanted to push back on hammering the Chiefs, the one thing Doug will show is he'll just keep throwing bombs. So, hell, they could be up 30-10 and you get a couple late scores and all of a sudden you cover.
Chiefs also are not great at covering these numbers of over touchdown favored. A lot of it is because, and you used to see this with Brady, the only time you would fade him was over a touchdown favorite. They're so good at running the clock out late. So, like if they're up, say they were up 14, Jags score a touchdown, they get it back to Kansas City. Kansas City is so good about, all right, let's get 5 first downs, and then we're taking knees at the 10 instead of like, a field goal, they don't convert. And then instead of covering with a field goal, you actually executed all the way down the field and ended the game with knees and you don't cover. Things like that happen. So, yeah, they haven't been great as over touchdown favorites, but I just don't see how the Jags can stop them here.
Okay, the night game. Sirianni just, if you read his quotes really over the last, month, but even the last couple of weeks, they are not acting like Jalen's over the hill. Everything is fine. This is something that's not going away. And, that makes me concerned. And Lane Johnson, who was limited in practice, it's fair to say, even if he goes, which I'm sure he'll try, he's an offensive lineman. Those guys are tough as shit. That's a big injury. An abdominal tear. Those 2 injuries on 2 of not just the best players on the team, and they were 2 of the best players in the league, and they were a huge reason this team has dominated. Now, when they were healthy, they beat the living piss out of the Giants. That game, I remember sitting on my couch. I turned it off mid-second quarter. I'm like, this is a joke.
Yeah.
And you can't take anything out of the final game because they were resting people, even though it was probably way closer than it should have. If you're the Eagles playing their backups, you don't want to win, 22-16.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm just unsure about the Eagles. I know the Giants are tough and they're going to try to muck it up. And if the Eagles are healthy, fuck, this is not a game. But, am I getting Jalen Hurts? Like, is he struggling to throw the ball? Is he a guy that hasn't played? This will be a second game in 30 plus days, right? He hasn't played much football lately. So it's not like he comes in with a lot of momentum. Yeah. And Kayvon isn't Michael Strahan. But if Lane kind of, does one of those, gives it a go, and he's just clearly in a lot of pain, the shot's not working, they got to take him out, assuming that they try to do that. All of a sudden, you got a backup in there. Can they make some hay? Your guy Wink, that guy just will bring people from every fucking nook and cranny on the field. So I'm prepared for this game to get weird just because the injuries for the Eagles. Obviously, fully healthy. I don't think this is a game, and like we talked about before we hopped on, this is probably a 10-point line, and probably people would be taking the Eagles. But I don't know. I wouldn't feel very good. I'm not betting this game just because there's too much unknown on the Eagles for me.
I agree. Too much uncertainty for me to get involved as of now. Lane Johnson is very important. And I mean, look, part of me thinks, all right, the Eagles aren't getting enough respect here just in general for a team that ran through the NFC, a team that didn't lose at all with Jalen Hurts and Jordan Davis in the lineup. And Davis is really important to their run defense. Then again, if you look at their schedule, who do they really play? But still, like, this is a team that dominated the Giants, dominated the NFC all year until some injuries late in the season. Meanwhile, the Giants seem to be getting out. They're everyone's darling. But this is a team that, if you look in the regular, they beat no one believed in the Vikings. They were complete frauds and showed themselves to be. But during the regular season, I mean, the only playoff teams they beat were the Jags in a crazy fourth quarter and the Ravens in a crazy fourth quarter comeback. They were dominated statistically in both those games. 9 of their 10 wins come by one possession. So like it's a team with a lot of flaws. Still, the roster's very flawed.
They don't have top to bottom the high end talent, right?
Yep.
Throughout the team, throughout the 22 guys on the field.
Yeah. So you got to give. That's why, I mean, to me, Brian Daboll is the coach of the year. I mean, just what he did with this roster and what he's done with Daniel Jones, and like Daniel Jones is not throwing the ball deep. He's taken away everything that Jones used to struggle with and just giving him easy throws. And to whose credit, Jones is making those throws. And last week, he's even throwing it downfield with a little more success. But if the Eagles are fully healthy here, it's not a great matchup for the Giants, because the Giants, look, they're getting pressure now, getting Adoree Jackson back is important. Their secondary is getting healthier. But their linebackers are so bad that they thrive when they're in like dime packages, and they can bring pressure, play with a lot of defensive backs on the field. But against the Eagles, they could just run right down their throat if they're doing that, which is what happened in that first meeting. Miles Sanders was running wild. And then if you make the Giants bring in their linebackers, then you're going to take advantage with the tight ends and Hurts running ability against the slower tight end. So it's a really bad matchup for the Giants defense. If everyone on the Eagles offense is healthy, which we don't know about. So, and if the Eagles jump out ahead here, and then with their pass rush, then it could get ugly for the Giants. We talked about this right before coming on the show. Giants got to keep this close early on. They're coming in with house money. Everyone on Philly, including the crowd's going to get tight. And then the Giants could have a shot to pull off the upset. From a betting perspective, though, with the line over 7.5, with the injury uncertainty to Philly, stay away from me.
This next game on Sunday morning, which, is just a fantastic football game. This is why you signed Von Miller in the offseason. The problem is he has a torn ACL and he's nowhere to be found, because you would be like, the pass rush for the Bills is going to be missing offensive lineman. Jonah Williams dislocated knee. They were already missing, the right tackle. So it's just, how would you block these guys? But Von tore his ACL. He's 33 years old. He's been injured before. He's injured now. So I don't know. I don't view the Bills defense, especially their pass rush, some vaunted pass rush that can just, it's not like Nick Bosa and, Micah Parsons are walking through that door, though they do have good young players. And Joe Burrow has shown that, he just can make shit happen if me and you are blocking for him. It's really pretty remarkable. And those receivers dominate. So, I kind of like the Bengals in this spot, and I'm not trying to overreact to last week, because to me, the Bills thoroughly outplayed them. It was the turnovers that kept them close. But Josh has turned the ball over a lot this year. He just throws the ball to the other team. To me, the fumble six, a little random, but he has thrown picks. He's played a little hero ball. I just think I have more trust. I mean, it's not that big of a difference. I mean, they're both elite guys, but I just feel a little more trustworthy in Joe Burrow. He's proven he can win on the road. I don't necessarily like him to win this game, but if I can get him plus 5.5, I mean, I'd have to take the Bengals in this spot, regardless of their offensive line. They made the Super Bowl last year with Anthony Munoz wasn't playing offensive line for him. I mean, it was a joke. So I just think the Bengals, man, they have this way of kind of staying in games.
Yeah, I can't blame you for liking the Bengals here. I disagree personally. I mean, the Bengals, look, they're 20-5 against the spread over the past 25 games. They haven't lost a game by more than a field goal in the last 21 games that Jamar Chase has played in. 21 straight. They either won or lost by 3 or less. But I just think the offensive line injuries, especially with a cluster, and look, last year their offensive line wasn't great. They got to the Super Bowl, but you got to remember, Burrow was sacked 9 times against Tennessee, and they won like 19-17. They barely beat the Raiders, and then they have a crazy comeback against the Chiefs, who just melted down. It's not like they were rolling teams.
For sure. Well, what happened in that game? They got 3 picks against Tannehill, right? So it's like with Josh, turnovers in these playoff games, you saw your team with the Ravens. Here.
If Allen turns it over, then this game will be close. But having those 3, and then you lose Alex Cappa, who's arguably your best offensive lineman in the interior. Now you're missing 3 offensive linemen all at once. And then you're going on the road. So and if you look at last week in the second half, the Bengals offense couldn't do anything. After those offensive line injuries occurred, they had 1 5-step drop back in the second half. Burrow was under pressure right away, and the Ravens don't have some great pass rush. Bills can still generate pressure without blitzing, and you don't want to blitz Burrow, which is good here for Buffalo. On the other side of the ball, I do think that the Cincy defense is a tad overrated, which is one of the reasons why I like Buffalo here. I mean, if you look, their metrics are really good. I really like their defensive coordinator. But out of the 18 quarterbacks they faced this year, 9 were backups. I mean, you just look at the last 2 weeks. I mean, you clinched the division, you beat Anthony Brown, and then in the playoffs, you get to play Tyler Huntley. You lost to Jacoby Brissett, you lost to Lamar Jackson. So just within their division, they got to play Cooper Rush when they played the Cowboys, Joe Flacco when they played the Jets. This is a team that benefited from a ton. PJ Walker, like a ton of bad quarterbacks.
And the Steelers quarterback situation, until the last couple of weeks wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, they lost to Trubisky, and then they beat Pickett, but gave up 30 to the Steelers in that game. So I do think that there's some – we got to remember they lost to Woozier, their starting corner. There's some holes at corner and at linebacker on this defense that I think the Bills can exploit. And then the Bills statistically had the best special teams in the NFL this year. Bengals struggle. Their kicker has been struggling a little more than I would have expected this year. I like their staff a little more too. So home field staff, you have the Bengals offensive line injuries. I think the Bengals defense is a tad overrated. The special teams, everything favors the Bills here. The wild card is the turnovers. So if Allen, which are fluky and hard to predict, we saw that with Prescott. It's there was the turnovers, and then last week he throws 5 touchdowns. So, I can't blame you for liking the Bengals with the points. I just think the offensive line injuries on the road, it's having a cluster like that, it's going to be really, really tough for Cincy here. But back in Joe Burrow, I could never blame you.
Okay, if the Cowboys had done what they did on Sunday or even on Saturday, and they were on the same schedule as the Niners, I would understand. And if I was going to bet the game, I would take the Cowboys and the points over a field goal. But the disparity of time off this late in the season, when the Cowboys have been on the road, they did that Thursday night game with the Titans, last Thursday night game of the year. Washington, right, on the road. Then last week on the road Monday night, when the Niners play Saturday afternoon. So by the time that they get back to Dallas, 3, 4, 2, and whatever, in the middle of the night, the coaching staff probably goes to the office, all popping Adderall, slamming coffee. I mean, they got to be just gassed. Even the players take a night off. To me, because clearly if Dallas plays a good game, they're a really good team. They got really good players. They could hang with probably anyone in the league, right? But because I think they're better than last year. Mike is probably a little bit better when Dak's on. CD's kind of coming into his own. Schultz is a stud. They relied more on Pollard now than slow Zeke, and Zeke's just really the red zone guy. But I do think that, and maybe the game's close early, but eventually you're going to run out of gas. That time off. The Rams won the Super Bowl last year, Monday night, but they were at home. I think being on the road, especially that's a couple time zones for the Cowboys to come back to Tampa. It's not like a 30-minute flight. I think that's really, really tough. Now, I was doing some research that some of the inactives for Dallas, obviously Tampa, they're a throwing team, so some of the defensive tackles that will probably be active for this game to try to neutralize. Dan Quinn's clearly a pretty good defensive coordinator who's been around the block playing Brock Purdy, but it's not just Brock Purdy, right? Kyle can get his playmakers the ball pretty easily. He hands the ball off a lot. Even some of the throws, he throws quick screens. He's not dependent like Josh Allen on 7-step drops, pushing the ball way down the field. It's easy for him to get the ball to his playmaker. So, I like the Niners in this game.
Well, I figured you would. I took +4, would take +3.5.
And I'm not I think the Cowboys are good. And I've said it all year, and people oh, they're not that good. I do think they're good. And I think they could win this game. It's just it's going to be. I would think that if it was a Saturday or Sunday, the Monday night game playoff, that's fucking difficult to overcome, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not discounting that fourth straight road game. You're going across the country, the rest disadvantage. It's definitely a factor. A lot of Adderall in those coaches' staff rooms all week, and but here's the thing. I mean, look, Purdy he's faced a really easy schedule of defenses. He's been in great game states, and Shanahan's going to put him in that position. But this is by far, I think, the best defense from a pressure perspective and from an exotic look perspective that he's going to get. We'll see if he can stay mistake free. But I also the key, I think, in this game is I think that if the Cowboys haven't been struggling lately, and the Niners who've won 11 straight, this line would be a field goal. And you do have to account for the rest and the travel. But I had to take 4, and I still would take 3.5. The one factor that I think is not maybe being accounted for here, and for what it's worth, teams on a 10-plus game winning streak in this round or later are 1-13 against the spread over the past 30 years. Is the San Francisco secondary. I think that there might be more cracks than we know, and we've seen it a few times. Like, they've had a very easy schedule, similar to the Eagles. But, we saw what the Raiders did. We saw, what the Seahawks did early in the game. And if you look at some of their deep passing stats, if you can get some time or give yourself time, there's some cracks in that secondary, and there's some opportunities that you can have. The San Francisco defense is elite, but I think that from a pass defense perspective, there's going to be some opportunities here for Dak, who I think is going to carry over a lot of that momentum from last week. No one needed a week like that more than him. So I think this ends up being a classic. RIP. I wish we'd Summerall and Madden on the call. And this ends up being this ends up being 20-17.
Well, one thing that's interesting in this game, because I think a lot of people think that this has a chance to be really close, and they should. It was, in a weird way, it was closer last year, the score, than the actual game. But I mean, Jimmy threw a bad pick to kind of get them back in the game. Okay, well, if close games in the playoffs come down to field goal kickers. Last time I checked, Robbie Gould's never missed a playoff field goal. Even though it's weird, I don't view him as he's never going to miss, but it always goes in. That situation last week, I mean, what happens if, it's a 10-10 game, second quarter, and the dude misses a field goal? All of a sudden, they start going for 2. They start going for it in spots where maybe they wouldn't. And in tight games, I don't know. I mean, I understand they were in a predicament. What are they going to do? Cut him and bring in some new guy with the second round of the playoffs? But that was unlike anything we did. I mean, it's never happened in NFL history, right?
Yeah. They signed Tristan Vizcaino. I don't know how this guy keeps getting work. No offense to him. I'm sure he's a great guy, but he was awful in college. And then he was the Chargers kicker, missing kicks forever. And then how's there just a shortage of kickers? But,
I don't know. It's just more people.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. They might, on the road, they might end up going for it on 4th and 1. You're not 4th and 1 early in the game. It's 3-0 late first quarter, and the Cowboys are driving. You're at the 27. Do you go for it? So it probably introduces a lot more variance, and I think a lot of it will come down. And by the way, you probably just jinxed Gold, but
I know
a lot of it probably comes down to if his first kick, his first extra point, his first kick,
for sure.
Because if that goes through, he was good all year. If not, and his mind, and that's what happened last week, then everything just kind of spiraled, and then let's say they score in the first drive, and McCarthy goes for it. Right? How does he ever roll him out for a field goal in the game? The kid would be like, it's which to me, that everyone, let's say they score the first drive, it's are they going to go for it here? Yeah. And he might. Yeah, I'm fascinated to watch how that plays out. And he was so good all year, and then missing 4. It's he got the yips all of a sudden. Didn't know how to throw it to first base, Chuck Knobloch status. So it'll be fascinating to watch. I think it just introduces a lot more variance in the game. I don't know who I would rather be San Francisco, but you might end up being the 49ers, and then all of a sudden, like last week, they go for it on 4th down, get a touchdown against the Bucs, and basically bury them because they didn't trust their kicker anymore. But it's fast. It's gonna be a fascinating watch. One final thing to add here is and this is something that I considered, maybe the NFC East was just really good this year, and that's why there's 3 teams in the division round from Win Division, first time since 1997. They went 30-16 against the spread in non-division games this year. So and it's, hey, look, maybe the Giants are better than we thought. They're here. Maybe Washington was better than we thought. And Dallas just absolutely put the screws to Tampa. Both teams win on the road. NFC East teams on the road last week. So maybe there's a little bit of value in the NFC East team. I just think there should be a field goal. And maybe a Meyer kick decides it and they lose by a field goal and San Francisco moves on. But yeah, I took the points here.
Well, I'm in complete agreement there on the NFC East. I mean, if Washington's your worst team, what they'd go 8-1. And like, I remember when the Niners beat them thinking, one, I don't know why they yanked Heineke in that game, but two, like that team has just, obviously they were a flawed team, but has fucking good players at a lot of different positions, like high-end impact guys. So I mean, it's like, geez, if that's the worst team in your division, holy shit. I mean, you're right. And Dallas wins this game, you're getting an NFC East, NFC Championship game, which first time the Dallas would be in the NFC Championship game since. And listen, if McCarthy wins this game, Super Bowl is always going to be the biggest win of your career. To me, this would be have to be the second biggest win, because you look back on that Chicago game that he won in the NFC Championship game. Remember, Cutler was hurt and then the sideline with the jacket. This would be more impressive given the short week, given that everyone's been shitting on this guy for years and beating Shanahan and on the road. So yeah, I mean, to me, this is the best game of the week. I think
game of the weekend. Yeah, I mean, Sunday's awesome.
Sunday's great.
I wish the Bengals had a fully healthy offensive line, but Burrow's still going to put up a fight. But yeah, I think when you add in like the nostalgia factor too, like Cowboys-49ers, big game Sunday night, this could be, and I think it's going to be close. So I think it could be one of the best games of the season.
One thing we learned from last week, I'm not going to shit on any of these games because you never know. I mean, the Miami Dolphin-Bills 13-point game, in that game, I was glued. So the Chargers up 27-0, and boom, second half of the year. So you just,
Ravens are in position to win before a fluke fumble.
Tyler Huntley. So Huntley. Shit, you never know. Just enjoy it because we don't have many more football games. Well, Stuckey, ETN, 17 yards. Let's go, baby. I like that one.
All right, let's get it done. Good luck this weekend.
See you, buddy.